trust and transparency. So I think LEARN is a leading initiatives within our our supercluster kind of focusing on this. So please go ahead and take it.
Thank you, Mo, and the team for inviting us and giving us a slot to discuss the trust and transparency in the smart initiatives for the Big Ag, GCTC, your smart communities trusted by design. And my name is Jenson. I currently co-chair the GCTC Smart Security and Privacy SSP group. The group had previously a name, CPAC. Many people knew it by that name, but with Chris Greer and his team's blessing, we have changed the name to now SSP. And I also am the founder and CEO of nonprofit Cybertrust America. So with these two organizations, you can see later on how together impactful or tangible and beneficial projects could be run towards the trusted by design goal. So for our conversation today, 3 items. First, we're going to share 3 communities who have done it. And from that, we can see what kind of resources are available and the team and process to make it happen for the 3 communities to be trusted by design. And last but not least, to take a look at your community to make sure that your smart initiatives are trusted by design. So about our 3 smart communities. Across the country, the first one is on the West Coast, the San Francisco Bay Area. And over here, a couple of initiatives have happened. The first is cyber risk assessment. And as some of our leaders here know, for you to protect anything, you first need to know what you are protecting. So that's what this cyber risk assessment project does. And this is done by the nonprofit Cybertrust America after winning a public RFP process, a very highly public process. And the nonprofit in the end won out in after pretty big competition with a lot of big wigs as well. So that's the first one. The second initiative is the multi-year planning. And this, if you're in the government, you probably know that DHS, since 2019, has stimulated that the local governments, including cities and counties and departments, for them to receive funding from Department of Homeland Security. And they now need to do a nationwide cybersecurity review. And this multi-year planning, therefore, utilize that NCSR for the local government and performed a multi-year plan so that the county or city could now achieve a desirable level based on that NCSR. So nationally, that level is not even meeting the minimum recommended level of on a scale of 1 to 7. Currently, not even 5 or not even 4.5. So the aspiring local government then can utilize that risk assessment and develop a multi-year plan to get the whole recommended level. So the team did that for a local government. And lastly, which may be of more interest to a lot of people actually, this is a regional governance and virtual security operations center. Now in the Bay Area, funded by the UASI, it's short for Urban Area Security Initiative, which is directly funded by the DHS, or actually as managed by Congress since the 9/11 terrorist attack. So if your government or your agency has not received any funding for such, definitely look it up. So in any case, in the San Francisco Bay Area, the UASI leaders saw that regional governance is very beneficial, and grouped together the Security Operations Center also could be cost beneficial and get the regional over about 15 local governments all protected quickly. So they funded this 2 projects, and together this in the region easily over 1 million for one of the local government alone, but together it's over 10 million people in the San Francisco Bay Area will be benefiting from these initiatives. So I mentioned this, that many of the agencies may be interested because later on you'll see, we'll come back to this, why you actually can readily tap into that together with the team that we have assembled under the GCTC. Okay, so that's the first smart community that's beefing up its security and privacy. The second one differentiates from the first one, not only from the geographical location on the East Coast, but also in the kind of project. This now is more focused on cloud architecture with rights built in architecture. Another aspect of it is that it's super easy for people on the main street to be able to understand. It utilizes the traffic light, green, red, and yellow, to intuitively get people to understand, oh, what kind of data it needs to, what kind of level of protection. And this is utilized in the water basin initiative in Syracuse. Also, some of you may know that Syracuse is a smart city hub as established in the whole state. So they also get funding from the state to embark on smart secure initiatives. Last but not least, our city, Coral Gables in Florida, also named City Beautiful, has done amazing things in that coastal city. The city itself, before we even, cannot take the credit from the city's leaders, because they already embarked on so many smart initiatives, including public safety, a search functionality powered by artificial intelligence, which already showcased its power of locating a young child that went missing in a record short couple of days, or maybe even hours. I don't remember all the details, but our leader, Raimondo, knows all about it. So if anyone is interested in, that's just a tiny or small example of the amazing functions of that smart city. And that smart city also is #1 in the United States in 2018. So you can see how far that smart city has come. For today's purpose, I listed this smart city here is to highlight the smart community initiative that the city has initiated during COVID-19, which our team has the honor to be part of the enabling force since the summer last year. And the initiative continues on to enable the small and medium-sized businesses in growing online securely. So that effort continues on. So those, you might say that, hey, all of these are more smart cities, not a whole lot on the smart communities, especially in terms of rural ag. So in light of that, I want to point out that the resources and team and process so that you can see how the team could be of assistance to your team if you are thinking about embarking on a smart city initiative in your rural ag goals. So the one example is that Mo, you can speak to this with more details better than I. For example, one time you had a leader from the Purdue Discovery Park visiting the Silicon Valley area. You were able to arrange for us to have a quick chat and talk about what are the key couple of things to consider even early on in the planning process. So just a quick example of how our team can do free consulting early on, even before a project is funded, kind of to be a CISO on demand sort of a consulting role for aspiring smart city projects. Now coming back to resources, team, and process. Besides your own resources, many leaders here already have your vertical funding sources. But I wanted to bring one other funding resource to your attention in case you have not tapped into this. And this is one that the San Francisco Bay Area, the funded projects I mentioned earlier, was leveraging in the past 2 years and continues to, of course, now. This is the Homeland Security Department for 2021, allocated $1.87 billion. And notice that there is a stipulation for the UARSC funding leaders to consider to allocate 7.5% of the funding in cybersecurity. So they already have all of this funding earmarked for this kind of projects. So I'll let you in a little secret. So when the nonprofit that I led got introduced to the Bay Area UARSC leaders, the leader told me, "Oh my, Lan, where have you been?" It turns out that they were actually also looking for teams and resources experts who are able to work with the local governments, coordinate, and help clarify regional goals that the local city CIOs, CISOs, and county CIOs, CISOs, and even different departments of transportation or emergency preparedness. For all of these leaders to clarify their goals together and then consolidate their goals and measurements into a proposal And that's exactly what we did in the Bay Area. Since I was introduced to them, we already were in connection with a lot of the local governments, CIOs and CISOs. And so together we met a couple of times, and then those couple of times materialized into 2 proposals, and both have been funded by the Bay Area URC since. And so if you have not done that, you can reach out to our nonprofit, and we can take it from there and orchestrate meetings with the local government leaders who may aspire for the same goals as you, and we together can reach the goal of getting funding and bring in the resources into delivering what is most needed. So now with the resources, of course, some of you may have heard about the recent announcement of the $500 million from DHS annually to local governments. And so that is newer. So the funding channels are not clear yet. So just a mention. I won't be surprised if it also comes through the URC channel, etc. So now with the team, I already mentioned about how the nonprofit works in junction with the local governments. So it's very affordable. Because it's a nonprofit, a lot of the expertise are shared freely. So it's not subject to the for-profit businesses. They have a bottom line to drive for. So every hour is kind of billable, etc. So it's not the same way, and it fits into the government operation model really well. Also, the whole process is affordable, good, and fast. Now, on the good side, how do we ensure that what we deliver is indeed best practices and in line with the NIST standards and other standards and requirements set out by Department of Homeland Security? So this is what we do. We already work with NIST, of course, and under the NIST GCTC initiative, we mentioned that the SSPS group, it has over 100 experts who are connected with the initiative and who publish writings and guidebooks, case studies along the way that incorporates not only the standards set out by NIST and DHS, but also best practices and forward-looking issues that have not quite worked its way into standards yet. So this is because of the nonprofits' work in junction with local governments. So there is a feedback loop that the group is able to combine the latest and the greatest and absorb the learning. In case you have not heard, there's a NIST GCTC has been working on a smart city and community framework. So that this group, SSP, has already authored the draft towards the framework. And so once NIST internal review is done at some point, the goal is to publish it. So now with this socialized, what you can see is that what you may say, hey, looks like it's interesting. it does get go places. So now what is required of me if I'm interested? I can say from our experience, the first and most important thing is your leadership. If you aspire to do something, the rest can be done together with the team. So it's just your leadership that will place your city and community on the map. And once you're on the map, you will be invited to also share your experience in this event. This is annual event that happens in October, in the month of the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. You can see that our leaders have all been part of this. And this year, the National Cybersecurity Alliance, the organization that's funded by DHS, that started the October as the Awareness Month, they are also a co-organizer. And we are aiming at 2,000 registrants. And this is the event set out exactly for people like you, because you are where the world does security. So I will conclude here, Mo, and I will post the registration link and also the DHS funding URLs into the chat window.
Alex, you're the last speaker, so you're free to talk about any topic you like to. You are full freedom. So you have a captivated audience.
Okay,
Alex,
great.
I think, of course, Alex has been a leader within the GCTC in terms of data. I put him in the group of trust and transparency because this is an area that's been really hard and he's been discussed some of them. But I believe, Alex, your knowledge about the network deployment, I think that would be very interesting to the audience. Go ahead, please.
I'm in rural America where I'm normally not able to transmit a video signal of me. Now everybody can appreciate how I look. Not that it's important. But now I can do things like screen share as well. So about every 10 years or so, we have an economic set of economic turmoil. If we look back through history, we can point to 2000. There's a great economic bubble around the internet. 2008, the financial collapse and so forth. As these events occurred, disproportionately, rural America was affected and had a hard time recovering. Part of this has to do with the way that we trust our leaders, the way that we vote, the way that we take action in our communities, the investments that we make ourselves, and the investments that we encourage. So establishing trust is crucial, especially as we're evolving to a society that's dependent on data and the value of data to make crucial decisions about our communities. In some rural communities, like in the San Juan Islands and in other places, central Colorado, we ran an experiment a few years ago to try to determine what we could do to increase trust and increase communications among individuals that lived in a region that had goods and services, that could exchange those goods and services, and thereby make a more resilient and robust economy in a region. And it's crucial. Amazon became a trillion-dollar company based on the fact that they know how to find things, present them to people, deliver them, and apply some reasonable standards like shipping, returnability, customer support, and so forth. The same mechanism, whether it was a department store in the 1950s, or it's Amazon today, or it's rural communities banding together to identify the goods and services that they can exchange with one another and do that in a trustful way. So what's the highest degree of trust is the value exchange. If I say I have a blue automobile and it has wheels and it runs well, and you purchase it from me, it better have what I said it had. Or you have peer pressure, you have reputation, you have other forces that change that trust equation. This is not buying something from 5,000 miles away or 10,000 miles away where the vendor might disappear, where you have no one to call, where you can't lodge a complaint, you may not be able to return an item. So it's crucial for us to understand that trust can be built, and trust is based oftentimes on value exchanges. So, you know, I put together a few slides that give us some background on these things and how can we do this. My belief is open source software, which made it possible for companies like Google and Facebook and many others to succeed. They didn't build and buy Microsoft servers in order to create massive search engines and massive cloud computing engines. They took Linux, Free Software Foundation's compilers, and other tools that were built by contributions of individuals across the world and used those to build their platforms. And so at its root, early days of Google, early days of Facebook, early days of many of these organizations that have become extremely large, they were built on collaboration and trust, that open information, you could look at the source code and see exactly what that source code was doing. You could see whether it was instrumented to collect data on you. You could see whether it was instrumented in a way that would be nefarious in your opinion. So the individuals had power to see into open source data. That model was driven by things like the Free Software Foundation's copyleft rules, which assured that individuals would always have access to the source code. It made sure that people could not copyright open source software and then close the door to it, make changes, and claim it had something to do with the original bag. So when we look at data and how data gains value, data has to be represented through some regulatory basis, some rights initiatives, and those rights initiatives simply are emerging today. EU has them with GPRD, and California has pretty strong rules. But do we have a model like open source software where I can go to GitHub, I can go to Stack Exchange, I can go to a variety of places that are very open, where people collaborate, discuss, and extend the value of software in a free way, in an open and free collaborative way. This is the fastest way that things have gotten done historically, and it's a lesson we should learn in how we treat data. When we collect data, crowds contribute that data knowingly, hopefully with their opt-in, not an opt-out policy. When they opt in to contribute their data, whether that's health data or behavioral data, location data, a wealth of information that's collected today, sometimes nefariously, oftentimes not, oftentimes for just business purpose, oftentimes under an umbrella of confidentiality, because it's confidential to that business how they use that data to improve their business. So that's where the transparency becomes somewhat muddy, and the challenge for our communities is, how do we make data available and transparent, and yet offer some protection to corporations that want to use that data in unique ways to offer unique products and services. These are the kinds of things that action clusters should be very excited about jumping into. We know that rural America has lots of untapped potential. They're great people, great thinkers, great minds. There's no real difference. Maybe the fresh air is actually better for some people too in rural America than in cities. So there's no reason that can't take place. As broadband becomes widely available, telecommuting, being able to collaborate online and so forth, makes it relatively a level playing field, whether you're in rural Colorado or rural Washington. These are crucial things that must take place. We must have broadband available to everyone. And some organizations like Toledo Tel in Washington State, for example, does an outstanding job of connecting everyone to fiber. Even though they're a small telecommunications company in a small town, they're able to drag a fiber optic line to a farm in their area and do that financially successfully and compete with large companies like AT&T, Comcast, and others. So the possibilities are there. The funding is certainly there now to put arms around things like broadband and that infrastructure. But we have to keep in mind that what we're doing to some degree has to do with the value of the data that flows over these networks and that individuals own that data, can collaborate to get value for that data, exchange that data, and so forth. And having market value exchange places. In other words, if let's say after COVID-19, that a number of people got together at a value data exchange and started contributing what kind of tests they took, what sort of vaccine they took, what sort of medication they were on, and so forth, in a compliant way with HIPAA and with privacy rules. That information is crucial information to pharmaceutical companies, to healthcare organizations, and more importantly, to the rest of the citizens in this nation and the world, because it represents real, valid information. And encouraging people to trust an organization where they can make those kinds of commitments in an open way, contribute their data, and share that. And also, by extension, if you look at Free Software Foundation, they have a license that assures that data remains free, that derivatives from that information and add-ons to that information, that various insights are encouraged to remain in that free pool. On top of that, the delivery of services, the delivery of treatments, the delivery of all of these other things that are crucial to keeping America healthy and safe. Those kinds of things are where the money is, and those are the areas where economic activity should take place. But researchers in Miami, I've had this conversation with one of the gentlemen from the University of Miami. Where do I find the data? Well, is there a single place to look? Data.gov in the US, places in France. We've looked for hundreds and found hundreds of locations where data exists. The rules are different, access is different, credentials are different, quality of the data is different. And achieving those kinds of standards are just the kind of challenges that rural America needs to put their arms around. And it's also a place, thankfully, where less bureaucracy takes place, possibly, than other locations. So you may find rural communities want to rally around those concepts and get that done, get the traction in place, show the models work, validate the value proposition, and get that model out in front of other people. So I think regionalization is really crucial for economically to maintain resiliency in that kind of an economy, in a data economy. So when we regionalize things, we're specifically looking for geographical and geospatial areas that have like-minded individuals, like-minded economic activity, and they have a lot in common. This is why in the San Juan Islands, in a county of 15,000 people, over 10,000 members or 10,000 citizens there are members of a value exchange that we started now 9 years ago. 2/3 of the people that live there, some of them are retired, some of them are children, so you can't count those. I would say we have the majority of individuals participating in that experiment. Likewise in Central Colorado. So this is not next door. It's not $100 million funded. It's a grassroots effort that encourages people in rural areas to exchange goods and services and do those in a respectful, civil way. And that grows nearly by itself. It doesn't require a tremendous capital infusion. Unfortunately, it's on a Facebook platform. We're just moving off of that now. But that is one of the risks when you think you're getting something for nothing, you really aren't. The data supercluster, we believe this is, it's crucial for us to understand the IoT data, sensor data, that impacts people's health. Particular 2.5 data has been demonstrated to cause early onset Alzheimer's. And those are studies, very large studies. So we know PM 2.5, particulate matter, which is easily detected, can affect people's health directly. We also know dispatch statistics for ambulances and various kinds of breathing problems, respiratory issues take place in that environment. Getting those instruments in place, having the public accept PM 2.5 sensors, and understanding what kind of benefits is part of that trust equation. If the community is not involved, you'll get the same sort of pushback that we get in several communities in the US. No, I don't want a camera here. No, I don't want a sensor here. It's invading my privacy. And that lack of understanding is part of an educational process that has to take place, whether it's in rural America or whether it's in cities and towns. So I think it's highly crucial that that integrity of the organizations that are deploying IoT and new sensors, that they are deeply connected socially with the individuals, leaders, and citizens, businesses, and other stakeholders in that community. And then things take off as they do. A great example we come back to oftentimes, and I love to pat Raimundo on the back in Coral Gables, that these kinds of sensors are accepted by the public because it's clearly in their benefit. They understand the benefit. So when we're talking about hurricane season, we're talking about disaster relief, with disaster recovery, and so forth. There are areas of the country that can benefit from IoT deployments in how buildings withstand hurricanes and winds and so forth. I think that's super critical. I think there's a great opportunity there for an action cluster to do just that. Baseline communities in areas of high risk, reduce those disaster impacts, speed up the recovery from those disasters, and build on that in their community and region, which I hope and I hear and I believe Raimundo is doing. So I think that same thing goes to the West Coast. It's on fire. Firestorms happen. Particulate matter is in the air. You know, I just heard a few hours ago that PG&E is going to try to bury something like, I don't know, thousands of miles of electrical line because they are causing some of these fires. The aerial lines themselves are not safe any longer. So I think it's important that they do that, and it's going to cost them 10 or $15 billion to do that. But it's also something that we should be aware of in our rural environment. Sensors and accountability and transparency are crucial to preserving life and property and health. You know, the trust challenge, everyone knows about this fake news. Some of us aren't aware of how machine learning can be fooled. So if you submit tons and tons of data to a machine learning algorithm and you want an AI recommendation for some wisdom to make a choice, a separate choice, well, if you feed it the wrong kinds of data, it's the old story, garbage in, garbage out. In this case, it's obscure garbage that's going in. Like, in other words, if every image of a face is of a specific race, then the return identification for a face will likely return that particular race, and that may not be accurate at all. So it's important that advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning scientists and researchers understand those kinds of things and continue to search, as MIT is and other places, for ways of debugging AI algorithms and machine learning algorithms to assure that they're accurate, representative, and fair with what kind of recommendations they make or what kind of identification they make. These are good business challenges as well as good innovation challenges. You know,
Alex,
we
5
saw
more
a lot.
minutes. So
Okay,
5
so
minutes.
I will speed this up. I think in rebuilding this this final slide here, one-to-one value exchanges really work. When you're looking at somebody eyeball to eyeball and doing a value exchange, you know who to go back to if the value doesn't turn out to be what that other person said it was. Globalization or obscuring things or dropping customer support. Where's the phone number at Facebook? You know, I saw this junk on your platform, Mr. Facebook, and I'd like to lodge a complaint. There is no phone number to call for customer service, and that's one of the ways that you maintain high income, low employee count, and that is a real challenge. So one-to-many value exchanges and so forth, they have to take place, but real economic exchanges in rural areas are regional, and we have models, and I'm happy to talk with people in detail about how those models work for us. and how they became so successful. So anyway, that's about it. If you want to get involved with our organization, the Data Supercluster, and we're really focused on these issues of privacy, transparency, and trust. We have periodic trust roundtables. We get together and discuss what we can do to raise the level of trust, to assure the public that, and to engage the public, to assure that crowdsourced and contributed information is used properly and turns out returned back to those people who contributed. So I think that model has to exist. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for the opportunity for speaking today. You know, we've had a lot. There's a tremendous amount we can talk about. I'm so glad that we're having these kinds of conversations about rural America. It's long overdue, I think. And I think the recovery in rural America is going to become faster and more sustainable as we embrace broadband, as we embrace interactions among individuals and businesses, and make those, especially make those platforms that we use for that kind of communications transparent and honest and secure. So thank you.
This is Dennis Buckmaster at Purdue. Not a question, just a comment about your last comment about glad to see emphasis in rural America. And as I reflect, one of my favorite reads from quite a long time ago was, I'm paraphrasing the title, or was the title something? Anyway, the subtitle was The History of How Farming Made America Rich. If you look at the history, the true history of our country, the reason the US is who we are in the place of the world stage, it's because our agriculture was productive. It allowed people to move to the city and do the other things. Not everybody was worried about where's my food come from, etc. So truly our success, if we have it at all, lends itself from the agricultural roots of our country. So it's about time to put the emphasis and give credit back. Just a comment.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that. And I'd like to just say too, prior to being an entrepreneur in residence at Itron, as we were trying to determine how you expand resource meters like water, gas, electricity, and so forth, I was very, very involved in flying IoT, merging drones with IoT devices so farmers could dispatch devices out over their fields, inexpensive devices, survey what's going on, look at blight situations. This near infrared technology that is very popular at UC Davis to determine the health of vineyards and so forth. The technology's there, right? We just need those projects to demonstrate that small farms can make this affordable. You don't have to buy the $20 million John Deere tractor and sign up for, you know, the tractor as a service in order to have a great farm.
There's one more question coming. Go ahead.
Yeah, one more quick question, Alex. This is Joe Swasty from Merit Network in Michigan, and we own and operate over 4,000 miles of our own long haul. So as I hear you talk about drones flying over fields, please invent one that can run aerial fiber routes and report back on the state of those things. It would really, really be a great advantage for us, and I'm not aware of any such technology.
And by aerial fiber routes, you mean potential aerial fiber routes, or determining where aerial fiber has been broken? Or
just aerial fiber hanging on poles, running through forests and, you know, the rural areas of Michigan. You know, trees fall, accidents happen, and sometimes we don't know about it until things get really critical. So, you know, as you're looking at your drone work, if there's opportunities there, we'd love to hear about it.
Please send me a note to Alex@Aspen.ai.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex and Lon.